So, you've spent all this time designing ways to listen to your customers, and you've gathered a ton of data. Now what?
You know, it's one thing to be able to say, here are the levers to flip. It's another thing entirely to say, if you flip these levers and deliver a better customer experience, here's the return in financials that you can expect to see.
How to gain useful insights from your customer data using analytics on this episode of the CX Leader Podcast.
The CX Leader Podcast with Steve Walker is produced by Walker, a business consulting firm that helps our clients unlock the potential of their customer experiences by placing the customer at the heart of all their business decisions. You can find out more at walkerinfo.com.
Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Walker, the host of the CX Leader Podcast, and thank you for listening. On the CX Leader Podcast, we explore the topics and themes to help leaders like you leverage all the benefits of customer experience and help your customers and prospects want to do more business with you. Gathering customer insights is one of the core practices of customer experience. Designing the most appropriate methods to listen to and interpret your customer data is critical. But how do CX professionals swim through all that information, creating a picture of what's actually going on within their customer experience? Today we're going to cover the topic of analytics as the first episode of a new series we're calling Best Practices, where we will explore the best ways to execute your CX strategies. And joining me here in the studio for this episode is my colleague Jessica Gregory, Associate Vice President for Advisory Services here at Walker. Jessica, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And how in the heck did we not get you on the program before now?
Well, I'm not sure, but I'm happy to be here now.
Where have you been hiding for the last year and a half?
Up at my desk.
Just hard at work?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I know you've been around Walker for a while, but just for the benefit of our audience, why don't you just give them a little bit of your background?
Absolutely. So I got into math at a very early age, so I pursued a mathematics degree in college. Very theoretical stuff and kind of boring, honestly, which I think a lot of people will agree with me. But my junior year of college, I took a statistics course, and that's where everything changed for me. Statistics is really applied. You get into solving problems and taking it and applying it to, real life situations, sort of like I was solving a puzzle every day. So that's how I decided to finish out my college career, was with a statistics degree. So I finished out my degree and came to work for Walker right away.
You've never worked anywhere else as a professional?
I have not. No, I have been here my entire career.
God, I love to hear that.
So I worked in the data analytics sector of Walker for quite some time, doing all sorts of fun data digging and analysis, and that's where I'm at today.
And what is it that's kept you here at Walker all these years?
Oh my gosh, the people.
People?
The people are fantastic to work with, and the challenges that I get to work with every day. I really love that my job allows me to tell a story, that I get to just uncover all of these neat findings and help customers figure out what they can do differently in their business to really help them grow, and it's really neat.
So just to put it in my own words, so you stumbled along on marketing research and customer experience, and then that's really been enhanced through your experience at Walker and all the clients that you've been able to work on.
Correct.
And all the professional benefits that you derive from studying data and finding insights in that data.
Absolutely. Good way to put it.
Thank you. Well, that's good. And that's a great topic and a great subject for this podcast, because most of our listeners are wanting to try to drive insights and create good business insights for their organizations. Why don't you just give us kind of an overview of how you think analytics works in the customer experience? What is the role of analytics in customer experience?
Okay, that's a good question. Really, it's something that everyone can benefit from. So from a newer program where people are maybe conducting a survey and they're trending key metrics, but they want to do a little bit more, they can start to layer on some key analysis to determine what levers do they have to flip to enhance that customer experience. all the way up to people who might already be doing that type of a thing. They can do all sorts of different analyses. They can segment their customers. They can link operational and financial metrics to uncover new findings, predict customer churn, et cetera. So it's something that's for everyone and will enhance I think any customer experience program.
Yeah, let me break down a couple of those. So you mentioned key driver analysis. Mm-hmm. I'm still surprised at how many folks just take some touch points surveys and they look for the biggest gaps. And then they start to try to address the places where their largest gaps are. And that's kind of a trap, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. It's amazing to me also how many people are just collecting that data and not doing anything else with it. So where those biggest gaps are is not necessarily the things that might be improving customer experience the most. So these driver analyses that we are able to do allow us to really drill down and figure out what are those levers that we need to push. And sometimes you are surprised. Sometimes it is not the things with the biggest gap. You could be performing pretty well, but customers expect so much more from you.
I think another thing that I see a lot is people tend to focus on their weaknesses as opposed to enhancing the strengths that they already have. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Correct. And that's a double-edged sword, kind of. You definitely want to focus on those weaknesses and improve those for your customer experience. But then you also do need to take into account the things that you're doing well, market that, leverage it with your customers, toot your own horn, let them know, hey, this is what I'm doing well, and that can bring just as much of a competitive advantage.
You mentioned segmentation. Talk about some of the ways that we like to segment data for our clients.
So there's a whole host of different ways you can segment your data. You can look at regional differences or age differences. But I like to go a little more complex than that. I like to take my data and run it through a segmentation program and figure out what clusters exist in my data. So it may not just be European customers performing differently from your APAC customers. It could be that your decision makers in the sales department in Europe behave very differently than another group within Europe. So I like drilling it way down farther.
How about the Walker Loyalty Matrix as a segmentation tool?
Absolutely. That's, I think, our most common method of segmentation. We like to look at the truly loyal respondents, or those who enjoy doing business with us and plan to come back, and compare those to perhaps the ones who are not as positive. And identify for those people, hey, what levers can we flip to move them into this loyalty category?
Yeah, again, it kind of ties back in with what you already have as your strengths. We kind of segment and say, these are the customers that already like you. Mm-hmm. And how could we make more of customers like that?
Exactly.
My guest on the podcast this week is Jessica Gregory. She's an Associate Vice President here for Advisory Services at Walker. And we are kicking off a series on best practices. And today we're talking specifically with analytics. And Jessica is a great resource for that. As you may have learned from listening already, she has spent all of her career focusing in on the finding the insights and the nuggets in the data that can help you create a better customer experience. Jessica, what in your experience, who in the client organization benefits most from analytics?
Everyone.
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 I love when you say that.
I think that's a trick question.
Well, obviously, I think ultimately we're trying to drive executive buy-in, correct?
Correct.
Frontline people?
I really do feel that everybody has a use for it. I mean, look, we have frontline people who in organizations are out there interacting with the customers every day. They need to know what things specific to their role they can do, whether it's the salesperson knowing that he needs to call the person personally versus send an email, or whether it is the repair man out fixing a piece of equipment, knowing that he needs to arrive promptly, all the way up to, as you mentioned, those executives who may not be as down in the weeds as those frontline employees, but still need to know, hey, here are the initiatives that we have in place in our organization. Here's how I can support those initiatives. and really, helping to drive the organization forward from that higher level.
You said earlier in your comments that combining the experience data with the operational data, or what a lot of our friends in the industry are now calling X&O data, which is a very nice and simple way to say it.
I agree.
That connection between X&O is really what speaks to execs, isn't it?
It is. And it's becoming quite a hot topic, honestly. When that data is available, it can be very powerful. It's one thing to be able to say, here are the levers to flip. It's another thing entirely to say, if you flip these levers and deliver a better customer experience, here's the return in financials that you can expect to see. I mean, just imagine what a powerful piece of information that is for an executive to hear. So I love when that information is available to me.
And if you're a CX professional, providing that kind of insight to your executives guarantees you some job security,
It
too.
It does, yes.
And a heightened awareness of what you can do.
Yes.
So what are some useful things that just sort of real simple things that maybe a practitioner could start to do to enhance their analytics around the customer data they already have?
Well, first of all, let's figure out what's working and what's not within our organization. So some simple relational analyses, correlations, ANOVAs, things like that, to tell us, where are we succeeding and where are we falling short in our organization. That's a great first step for a new practitioner in the analytic world. Second of all, I think identifying customers who are prime for growth opportunities is an excellent second step. It may be as simple as adding a question in the survey that asks people, how likely are you to increase your spend with my company in the next year? Identifying those folks who say that they're very likely to increase spend, and then figuring out what do those customers need that might be a little different than your customer base as a whole. And then on the flip side of that, another great place to start is identifying those customers who might be more at risk of leaving your organization or of churning. What can we do to help mediate their experience? Because oftentimes, again, that looks different than your average customer. So is it doing things like reducing the time to resolve their issue or the number of interactions that they had with a support person, things like that? Those are some really great basic places for someone to start poking and prodding their data to try and coax the story out.
Now, just not to get too technical, but a little more complex, because a lot of I know you do. A lot of our listeners are B2B companies. What about the inherent issues in the analytics related to when you have multiple surveys within an account or multiple contacts within an account, which many B2B environments do create?
Absolutely. And that has been an issue that many have struggled with since I have started my career. And in that case, it is really great to try and look at things at an account level, if at all possible. So not only is it important to know what your individual customers are saying, it's important to know and assess the health of your account overall. So rolling up those scores to an average to be able to assess how to save or grow particular accounts is very important as well. So a lot of the analytics that we use at the customer level can also be extended to the account level and applied at that higher level.
And that also enhances the combination with the O data there too.
Absolutely.
When you can roll it up to an account, because then you can look at like how profitable the accounts are, which ones are growing, which ones are declining.
Yes.
And I think that kind of insight is something that most CX professionals could pretty easily put together, and I think would really help them tell their story internally.
I would agree. I've seen it be extremely powerful when it is applied correctly, available and applied correctly.
All right, Jessica, now we've gotten to my favorite part of the show, and that's what we call the take-home value section of the show. And I always ask every guest to give their best tip to CX professionals out there who are trying to enhance their impact and their value to their organization. So Jessica Gregory, analytics expert, what is your best take-home value tip for our listeners?
My tip to you would be to use your data. All too often, I am seeing clients just collect their data, get a trend score, get the number for the executive, and then not do anything with it. And I think that that's a real shame. You have this wealth of data there on your customers, survey data, any type of operational data you have on them. We should be using that. Just get started with it. Tell a story. Get a complete picture of your customers. They are giving you the feedback. They want you to know about them. Just use your data that you have. Make it powerful for your organization.
Yeah, particularly the relationship data has a pretty long shelf life. Mm-hmm. You could probably, in a B2B environment, you can probably analyze relationship data for many months, if not even a year. A lot of our clients tend to do annual relationship studies.
Yes.
And if you mine that data throughout the year, I think kind of a corollary to that too also might be is if somebody comes and poses you a problem, it doesn't need to begat new research.
Correct.
Maybe you can make some hypotheses and go back to your existing data sets and tease out some of the insights, correct?
And that's a great point. Going back to previous data is a great way to provide even more insights and findings to your organization.
Actually, I think the academic approach would be before you ever start new data, right? New research, right?
Absolutely.
You would review what's in the literature and make sure that you're not repeating.
Off on a wild duck chase, yes.
Exactly. Jessica, thank you very much for being a guest on the podcast. Just in case any of our listeners want to get a hold of you, do you want to give them your company email maybe or your LinkedIn?
My email address is jgregory@walkerinfo.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn at Jessica Gregory.
Thanks. Jessica Gregory is an Associate Vice President for Advisory Services here at Walker. She's dedicated her whole career to the power of analytics and finding insights in your data. So if anything spoke to you here in this webcast, I hope you will reach out to Jessica. And if you want to talk about anything else you've heard on this episode or anything about previous episodes or anything about Walker, feel free to contact me at steve.walker@walkerinformation.com or call me here in the U.S. at 1-317-843-8890. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to hear from all of you. Don't forget to subscribe to the CX Leader podcast. You can go to walkerinfo.com/podcasts, and you'll also find links to iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and on our own YouTube channel as well. Simply go to walkerinfo.tv to listen. And if you haven't heard, Walker was named the Qualtrics 2019 CX Partner of the Year. You can learn more about that by going to walkerinfo.com/x4. Thank you for listening to the CX Leader podcast, which is a production of Walker. We're a business consulting firm that can help you make customer experience your biggest competitive advantage. Find out more at walkerinfo.com. Thanks for tuning into this podcast, and we'll see you again next time.